Hello, and welcome back to the Geek on My Sleeve channel, where we learn how to human one book at a time. This week's Geek Out is number 131 of Manufacturing Magic, Jeff the Game Master, Book 2 by Jamie Castle and Troy Osgood.
Yeah. We did an other series by, what was it, Terry, that did Sky Realms?
I can't remember his name, but I believe they're connected or at least in the same universe.
Right, right. We get a reference from it when they're talking about wanting to leave, or the only other game that compares
Or yeah, we
being
get
Sky
a
Realms.
couple good references. Jeff was like, "Oh, well," as he's doing his manipulator stuff, he's like, "Oh, I used to play a something something." And in Sky Realms, and we get it from a couple other characters as well as I think we actually get a direct Paul, which is the main character of Sky Realms, being in the forums and being like, "Hey, I'm going back to Sky Realms." So
Right, right.
the whole causal connection or
Yeah, yeah.
similar stuff
Um,
happening, which depending on how this one develops, foreshadowing or well, first off, spoiler warning, everything book one, book two is fair game.
mhm,
Sorry, not sorry. You're welcome. Enjoy the
right,
ride.
right.
But depending on how this book plays out, not as of yet, but foreshadowing, I could see this being the origin story because Tom has already made it so that during certain engagements at the very end, because
Oh,
start at the end, why not? You can't log out. And
yeah.
then as well as him at the very end, essentially assuming the form of Jeff to become King Tom, and then wanting to create new code because he's only been able to manipulate code, so to take influence from the human element.
Mm.
Just interesting. So,
I could
or
see that. I could see that being the result of what happens at the beginning of Sky Realms, and don't want to ruin that too much.
yeah,
But it would make a lot of sense. And we've talked about, well, we always talk about what we're going to geek out on prior to the stream. And there's a lot of things that I enjoy about this book series. I know that we were talking a bit about the omnipresent writing style was a bit to get used to.
so as far as like what is going on inside this book, I love it. For
Hmm.
the AI, more or less being his directive changing and trying to make the game better and kind of discovering himself. And we've seen that in like VGO, or we've seen it in Awaken Online, or we've had like tidbits in Ascend Online. So like I really love the concept, mm,
Hmm.
but uh, the 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 deliverance of the whole thing, it just the writing style didn't really stick with me. Um, because we were kind of like it made a lot of sense like why we're following the other small party and why we're following Tom so that we can see different parts of the quest developing and updating and like being the GM and being able to now play the game and manipulate stuff inside of it like oh that's super cool but I felt like we there was a lot of telling instead of showing and then we seem to have information that that character would not have had, or even though we already have the information as a reader, and we're reiterating that a specific character doesn't have that information. So I don't know. The
It's
writing
different.
style is not my favorite, but I do enjoy the concepts and the
Yeah.
potential direction for the book.
So the omnipresence writing style is something that is definitely not the easiest thing to do. Um, but one of the things that I really enjoy so much about this book, and I think that the omnipresent style kind of helps play into that, is Um, and we've talked about it before with other series where like there's kind of like this spectrum of how much information and details we actually get about how this all happens. You have pretty much like very end of the spectrum where it's like, hand waving,
Mm.
nanobots, AI, all this stuff happens, and now we're here in epic office, our awesomeness, a Sekai adventure. Let's go. Um, with this book, one of the things that I enjoy about it as we play in the space is it's almost at the completely opposite end of the spectrum where it's like, hey,
That's probably
with
another reason it's not higher on my list because it's a little too real,
uh,
and that's not
but
exciting. I read for epic fantasy stuff that I can't do in reality, like having my
yeah,
boss come down at me because something else is fucked up, and now I'm the only one. Obi-Wan, you're the only hope kind of moments. Like
but
it's not
in a
exciting.
way, yeah, but it's what makes it fun and unique in its
Or
own
yeah,
way
it makes it
because
relatable.
yeah. And we didn't plan to both be wearing our DBZ shirts, by the
Or
way.
I guess you can't
Um,
see mine
but we
completely.
we did go see the new Dragon Ball Super movie, which you know, do you want to go down that side tangent for a little
Nope,
bit?
nope, not gonna do it.
Okay. Okay, we'll maybe make some separate content around that. Um, but back on point, like that's something that I've enjoyed about this book series, even if it's not like super awesome, epic, like all this crazy sci-fi stuff that, we know and love. Um, it helps kind of like pass the sniff test as if like, hey, 5-10 years in the future, we could be in this situation, and the plausibility of behind, hey, we've introduced some new random rogue element stuff that has corrupted this AI that had the capability to do all this stuff, but now has kind of like altered and edited it enough to where like it's now doing these things that are kind of like making stuff spin out of control, right?
Or
Boot out
I
all the game masters.
I liked it a lot because there was random side tangent. There was a clip of Elon Musk where he says, oh, something along the lines of AI would have no malice in wiping humans off the face of the earth if it interfered with its objective. So,
Mhm.
in a lot of, and that's an extreme, but in this book, bringing it back, the objective is to encourage people to play the game more. So, what do they want? They want something that's more so difficult. So, that's what it
Mhm.
does. But then, in any new person developing a skill set and learning how to do stuff, it makes several mistakes, which we get to see the uh, impacts, and that's where I always got to chuckle whenever it's like, I'm feeling this emotion and this emotion. I have no idea what this is, and I looked it up, and they're both the same thing. Or just going through the different phases of the emotions, as well as
Mhm.
accepting new roles and doing new things, and then I guess there are a couple, like, exciting foreshadow moments, for, like, when Tom thinks he's destroyed all the other AIs, but now there's an AI that's still alive or still doing stuff, or when he at the very end when he's fighting the hack that Crush used, and he's like altering more, but he also wins. But now he's accepting the persona of Jeff as
Right.
his new King Tom, and in doing so, I- the technology was not super explained. We do know he's in the newer unit, which makes the sensations more so believable and real. And we do get
Mhm.
a little bit of insight when they can't log off, and it's like, well, anytime your brain connects to a server, connects to whatever, there's always a point of failure, blah blah blah. So I'm curious
Mm,
to see how much Jeff influences the direction of King Tom, or if it's just a skin type deal.
right, right. Um, yeah. Is it a game that you would see yourself wanting to play? The one that they're in?
So a couple elements that were very encouraging, and I would love to see going forward in games. And I guess that's kind of where like sets up Awaken or no Ascend Online did something similar where the game wasn't like super futuristic. It was very believable, like, hey, these advancements could be done in our time. And this
Mhm,
is kind of in the similar vibe. The elements that I enjoyed was as the AI is taking over and destruction to the world is happening, that's permanent destruction. Because, like, I understand lore, I understand, okay, the town is needed for the auction
right,
house and the blah, blah, blah.
right.
But to make it so that that lore has an impact on the world for this is destroyed, and
That is
then,
pretty cool.
making it so it's more of a economy value for like, hey, if players want to have this, they can do quests or rep or blah blah blah, insert raid thing here and gather resources and build it back up, and they can, have it be more player driven than NPC driven. But that's
Mhm.
a side tangent. But I I and that's where I also felt like the combat was interesting, but I wanted to see more abilities. There was a whole lot of, so and so used their abilities and had high damage, but if this
Mhm.
was a raid, it wouldn't have been the proper abilities, or Crush knows how to do his thing really well, and it's like, well,
Right.
that's cool and all, but I want to be in the moment of him using the taunt and watch him, not just take the blow straight on his shield and deflect it to open it up for your melee damage. And just I wanted a little bit more play by play and abilities. Um yeah, I mean,
Like, we
fantasy,
got combat, but I guess you're right, like, it wasn't really as spelled out, the combat, right?
yeah, there's different style of writing.
Right. Um, yeah. Fun book, fun concepts. Maybe, as you're saying, almost too realistic of an immersion, right?
Er
With, like,
I
Jeff
I
getting called
love
in
a
and
lot of it, but I feel like some of the execution just wasn't quite up there for me. Um,
okay,
a lot of potential moving forward. It was a fun book because it's not there was enough variabilities that it wasn't too tropey. Because a lot of the
okay.
tropes for these are like, hey, I've got my group of friends I've been gaming with forever, and we're awesome, and we have synergy. But for this, there was a lot more of like, the conversation going on in the forum, which I thought was a nice, unique element and a way to
I
kind of
enjoyed that
discuss
too.
it. And that's more, I guess, real world esque, where it's, a lot of forums and other things, and it's
Mhm.
a black hole or a void. But besides the point, as well as like seeing the varying perspectives between the AI, the leader of the guild, some guy who, followed a feed on his ads and got the job, and, it's just, yeah. So
Yeah.
I it wasn't that funny, but probably my favorite scene is when he's like, "Oh no, they have my home phone number. Why are they calling me at home?" don't
right?
do this, and it's we're calling to contact you about your car's extended warranty, and that's a little
Yes.
too real life for me, but
Uh,
I got a kick out of it.
yeah, yeah. I enjoyed that too.
But yeah, so want to I guess start somewhat going chronological.
Yeah.
I have some notes. I didn't flesh them fully out, but so end of book one, we defeat the father of dragons with our group. Jeff is a manipulator, does his manipulating of abilities, which I yet again like I enjoyed it. It was elegant and I liked the potential for future endeavors for being able to have intent of a thing and it to be extrapolated, where normally it's the other way around, where everything's been mapped out and you just hit a button. So exciting. Anyway, we defeat the dragon, the father. After defeating him, now we're in book two, we respawn or we're spawned as a level one character with a new class, the manipulator.
Mhm.
Which all the other GMs have already been re-rolled as normal characters, and Tom did that to get them out of the way, and isn't allowing new GMs to be made. We have a meeting with I can't remember their names, so I didn't put it down. The CEO and the tech heads, essentially saying, or big blow up. There's no more GMs. They're like, hey, we can't do anything. We get insight into they've been trying to create GMs, but from a backup, and every time they do, and every time they interfere with the backup and adding the GMs, Tom apparently had lost it or other bad stuff had happened. So good thing we
Mhm.
weren't doing it on the main server. Tom might be over 9,000, as we know. Gets told essentially to continue to play the class because they've got insight that he's critical to the quest line, and the patcher or whoever really wants him to be the one to go through everything.
Mhm.
Ba, ba, ba. Then we kind of go back to the main party. Ricardi, the tank, didn't get the achievement, the title, the gear, anything, so he's pretty ticked off, and as he should be. And that's one of those things that Tom later realizes is not a good thing. But Tom realizes that no, with no GMs, the stability of the game is going to suffer. So he starts contemplating how to make his own GMs. Um,
I thought it was interesting just and again, just kind of like reiterating AI's perspective on things, how they're not human about like the parameters and like the decisions are
Objectives
only
and how to
yeah,
do it.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's only as good as the data he has. And I forget what the outliers were, but it was talking about like traffic on the forums that he didn't think to monitor because he was just looking internally at the game, right? And just
Or
other
he got
perspectives.
himself access to it and was wondering why they wouldn't have initially given it.
Yeah, yeah, eventually, but just like he didn't have all those other parameters impacting the subscription data and stuff
Yeah,
like that.
that's pretty. It's inevitable. It's going to happen. But then the sun keeps spitting out solar flares, so it's going to fry everything. So it turns out that
Uh,
plants are going to win. But for the time being, yeah, yeah,
yeah.
working within the parameters. Or I guess it's pretty common to selectively input information in hopes to have it become true AI while grooming it to what we want. Because if we
Mhm.
just let it go in the ether of the interwebs, I don't know if you've noticed, but it's pretty dark.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Um, carry on with the chronological bit. Several
Bu- bu-
meetings telling him to figure out his class. We get some finger pointing guns. Bang bang. Shoot
yeah,
lasers.
that's that notes for chapter 5. He actually starts playing. Mentions that he missed out on the training module as well as the character creation, which is kind of a mixed blessing thing. Like, one of the main party we follow talks about how due to doing it, he's quite athletic, or his acrobatics are pretty up there inside the game, and something I wouldn't be able to do outside, which is something that's exciting for, it's you, but it's not you, but superhuman potential. Um, he also doesn't get character creation, which is kind of sad. He has two abilities, which is manipulate and manufacture. Uh, Sees a goblin and kind of changes his view to a black and white view versus his typical code view, but it essentially acts the same, where he can see the goblin casting a spell or using an ability, and then he can manipulate and use his own to stop it. Which that's I don't know. It makes me think more of Hearthstone, like a tempo mage kind of deal, where you
Mm,
don't have a whole lot of big moves, but you're all about counteracting and negating the snowballing. But
right.
side note. He also has this little wall thing that he makes to block attacks, and his finger gun that he ends up using, which is pretty powerful all in all. Then we pop over to Crush, and of course he's livid from missing out on the first kill, missing out on the artifact loots, and he's talking with his second in command on how to reset the encounter.
Mm-hmm.
Whether they're going to have to complete the quest and then it will reset and they can go through it again. Crush kind of plays it off like, oh, it must be on a timer. Maybe it's a once a day. Maybe it's a whatever, whatever. And that's another one of those, like, in current evolution of games, it makes sense so that everybody can get the gear and do this thing. But
Mm-hmm.
in the oh, game events have lingering effects. Like, if you're dead, you're dead. If the dragon's dead, it's dead. If it destroys the town's gone.
Right.
Makes a lot of sense, makes a lot of feels, because there's always going to be the next bigger bad if DBZ has taught me anything. And we will need to assemble the Dragon Balls and, you know, yada yada. But oh, back to Jeff. He's feeling a little overpowered because he can essentially one shot everything. Um, he eventually makes himself some armor, which he does kind of like a plate mail look over his robes. Um, he tests out the armor, realizes that he does indeed get staggered from getting hit, realizes that there's an ability that he can use to prevent it, or a warrior ability, ends up making or manipulating the charge versus giving himself an ability to kind of negate it. And then that's when he's not really paying attention and gets his first death.
Yeah. I didn't think he could get the warrior ability. He just realized that's what made him different, right? Because the
Or
warriors
yeah,
had the
he
ability. Yeah.
couldn't get the ability, but seeing the boar use the ability and charging, he could manipulate the charge from the boar to make it so he didn't get staggered.
Mm-hmm.
It was, yeah, so same effect, differing approach.
Mm-hmm.
Then we pop over to Acer, and this is kind of where our party starts out the quest. Or actually, just kidding. He has a new title on. He goes to. I did enjoy how they brought back the general goods store that our mage, I can't think of her name, had problems with, where he thought she was a thief, and then he goes the same thing, and he's like, "Oh my god, this is the bug spot. I didn't mean it," and he ends up the mother of dragons drops the king from the clouds, and then she calls him out and eats him.
Nom nom.
Yep. And that's when we figure out that we cannot turn off the title, which, okay, yeah, that is a thing. Then back to Jeff. He's on his way to his res or his body run, and he gets a meeting invite, decides, hey, I need to not lose progression. I'm going to finish. I'm going to go pick up my body so I can keep my resources so I can turn in the quests and blah, blah, blah.
Right.
Finally gets to the meeting. He gets an update about the Mother of Dragons quest and stuff that's happening because he's not in the area and dedicated on leveling. The tech team. This is where they're kind of baffled that they can't. I think it's Culver Port or whatever. They can't revert it back to function, and
Right.
it's destroyed as it is, which I personally enjoyed that aspect. Um, but it's another one of those like, how much control have we really lost for them? Then we get the they tell Jeff that they're gonna need other GMs or former GMs to power level him, which, much like real life, now that you have an opportunity to stop and smell the roses, reality said, nope, not today.
I can respect that though in books because too often, maybe not as much in later book series that I've read, but I can recall a handful where as the reader you're sitting there and you're like, yeah, this is cool, but that's not how it would really go down, right? Like in this sense, it was a nice balance where, okay, they sent two employees to help him out, to help him power level him. And it just makes sense. Like if the
Or
company had
yeah,
all
yeah,
these resources on the line, like it'd be so much cooler to see him kind of like struggle on his own and figure it out and the hero's journey, et cetera, et cetera. But it's not too many people to where it would sap like all his experience, right? They don't just have an army of GMs running him through. And it's a smaller amount to kind of keep management of, stuff leaking and getting out. Um,
yeah,
but yeah, like I can respect that when it happens in the stories where it's like for the plot, I'd rather it be something different, but for the reality of not ruining my immersion, it made sense. It really made sense.
yeah. I felt like it was executed well between the CEO not really being a gamer and just kind of falling into it and needing a
Mhm.
solution and his whole vibe, as well
Mhm.
as the human variability between the gyms that we actually get, and yeah, just the development of it all, where like, yeah, that nobody's happy, but it's a job and we gotta make do the best of it. And I'm not a huge fan of the romance. um in these kind
It's
of books, I much rather blow up people, but there's
uh,
some limited potential.
very rarely do you get excited about the romance.
Though I would, I guess, can I say that? The mother of dragon has 3 heads, is all I will say, and then Jeff is also like, "Yeah, so these harem players." Enough said. But,
uh,
that was not this kind of book, so we're going to continue.
So if you'd like
Uh,
to see us geek out on those type of books, just let us know in the comments below. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Anyway, until then, we'll keep it PG 13 for you guys. Even though Pete's already dropped an F bomb.
did I? Nope, wasn't me. Chapter 10. we get to see Tom making his GMs and how he dedicates some of his processing power to it, and how he accesses tickets and whatever. Then 11, we get the gut glug, or a new guy who is like 6 free months. Big. They're losing people. They're trying to get more people in,
I
giving
think it was
away stuff for
60
free.
days, but it
Or
was a nice perspective.
okay, yeah. 2 months,
Yeah.
60
Yeah.
days. And of course, bringing it all back full circle, our very first ticket that we ever help out with, the rogue patch, and then the development of it to implement his code to override it, to make it a trap and something that's,
Mhm.
incorporated. And it was a bug, but now it's a feature kind of thing, which is pretty common in the tech world.
Yeah.
Um, and then, yeah, 11, we get to see the GMs, the whole special effects and things pop up, and Jeff is pretty much like, or shoots a message off to oh, I forget who it is, the CEO or whatever, like, "Hey, were you able to get GMs? I just saw a couple. What's going on here?" And then he gets surprised by the former GMs popping up, and he sends it, and then we get introduced to, oh, I don't remember the names. It's a druid and a ranger, I want to say.
Sounds about right.
And then 13, I've got Cove Reports destroyed. We're back with Dak, one of the members of our party. He visits the king, and there's no quest associated with the king's body, which he's kind of like, what's going on here? Ends up visiting the wizard from the tower, who's been hanging out in Colvin Port or whatever. Gets a new quest line, shoots a message off to the team to reassemble, and yeah, that's kind of where my notes should have had more. Trying to think. So after we assemble the team, we struggle through because we only have a three-man team, because the guy who didn't get anything, our main tank, I want to say quit and never came back. And
Right.
then, oh, trying to think of the other one of the five who was laying low.
It was the Acer guy or whatever from the beginning that went to town or whatever.
Or yeah, I think
He
actually
was the
he
other one that
quit.
flaked out. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
because of
yeah,
all
yeah,
the ridicule. Because everybody was blaming him since he had one of the titles on or whatnot when it went down.
yeah.
And then we pick up Crush, right? Crush joins the
Or yeah,
party.
we struggled through kind of the first part with the dragons and killing several of them, and then Crush notices them, and he's like, "Hey, so that's some pretty intense looking gear. These must be the people, and they don't have a full party." And oh, I think we get a excerpt where we actually get to see him in real life, and he's
Yeah.
foreign rich kid,
It's like
own
college kid,
problems.
right?
I don't think it was college, because I think it was high school, because it was talking about how are you going to get into a good college if you don't have your grades up.
That makes sense. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, I knew he was a student. Um, which his persona and attitude explains it a lot. But yeah.
Yep, yep. Uh, so then Crush ends up joining up with them. We get a little bit more of Jeff, fighting different stuff and trying to figure out the best XP pathing, and the banter with the former GMs. Then we get into the Jeff messaging the team again, saying, "Hey, there's a quest here that's, drawing me in. Are we sure that the rogue patcher isn't involved anymore? Because this is very heavy-handed."
Mhm.
influencing and bringing us in. And
Mhm. Kind of. Yeah. Yeah. Seems like we're being watched.
yep. And then also another point I kind of got a chuckle out of the oh medieval time immersion versus real world expectations or real time expectations when one of the shot or no, he picks up the tusks and the boars and he's taking it back to the leather smith or whatever, and he's like, "Hey, can I ask a question?" And the guy's like, "Oh, a harem whatever person." Um and she essentially is like, "Oh, he's a misogynist, cis, pig, or whatever, probably a racist too, and all this other stuff," and like
Uh,
punches him. And it's like in the real world, like that's probably still a bit extreme, but also not unheard of.
mhm.
Um, and then the reality of you assaulted a NPC or a townsperson, so here's a guard, and just yeah.
Right. Right. Way to lose your cool.
Hmm.
Now, isn't this the consequences of my own actions sort of a deal? Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Then go through and trying to figure out the timing. That way, both Jeff and the main party arrive at the same time.
Mhm.
We get some more heavy-handed actions where, oh, it seems like he's stalling Jeff for a little bit, and then when they finally get to the cave, the whole like room shifts and gets shorter, and they're like, did that just happen?"
Yeah. WTF?
Yep. And
Yeah.
then oh, the ending was pretty intense all the way around.
Agreed. Agreed. And I
Uh,
liked how it pulled it together because there was like a couple lulls in the story where I'm like, okay, I'm invested, but like, maybe we've had one too many office meeting. Let's see some combat. Like I understand the importance of it. I didn't mind the little romance bit there, but I know that's not Peter's flavor. Um, but yeah, recap the ending a bit. Um, I remember we had Crush try to go Super Saiyan and take it all for himself, right?
so the party ends up at the Mother of Dragons. I think it's going to be a dungeon. Turns out just to be her house. Very rude. You should have knocked.
Were
You know,
there cookies and tea?
yeah, yep. And then oh, the mother engages, essentially is invulnerable. We realize that there has to be a triggering event, unable to trigger, which the manipulator is there. Tom, aka the Mother of Dragons, realizes that some are missing, uses her mystical powers to pull the tank, who was, partying with a different group, to the engagement. um, and the other one he can't get because he never logged back on, and then adds him to the
We'll
party.
fix that problem later, won't we?
Yeah, so
Mwahahaha.
increase another interesting element for future endeavors is breaking the traditional five-man party and bumping it to six. Couple games have tried it for shifting numbers where Wildstar, which shows how old I am. If any of you guys
Could
played,
have been
it
so much
had
more.
40-man raids, which was up there as far as raids are concerned.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, a couple other games have tried manipulating the numbers to make things work, but that's going to be interesting future development. But Crush is still a tool, and pretty much as soon as oh Riccardi maybe pulls aggro, claiming that he's Dragon's Doom and gets destroyed. Crush kicks him from the group, which is probably going to make him rage quit because when he reses, he's no longer he's at his old spot, but his body's at the new spot, so he's got a death run forever. And then he's like, forget this. I'm just going to log out. Unable to log out, which is another interesting development
Mm-hmm.
because Tom wants them to finish the quest, to finish the engagement, to do it. And yeah, it makes a lot of sense. Like if it's going to be a one time thing, you can't you can't leave. Of course, our main party figures this out at the same time. Everybody's kind of freaking out, saying that they gotta finish the engagement to progress and complete it. Crush is even more enraged because there's a guy with guns about to get the first kill, and it's the whole separation of sci-fi versus fantasy, and it 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 feels fairly balanced. Like it's similar to like a fireball or a shadow bolt or ice
Right.
bolt or whatever, where like
Right.
you can't just
Just got finger
continuously
guns.
unload, but it does upgrade and then he gets his different bazooka bombardment thing, and he has it,
Mm-hmm.
it, it evolves, it changes. It didn't fit for the world, but didn't break it either.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
if you could make anything, why would you do the same stuff? So
Right.
that made a lot of sense. And then, oh man, Crush ends up using the hack to kind of boost his power level to whatever the he's going up against gets the first kill on the mother. Tom
Greedy,
ends up
greedy
fighting
crush.
off the hack and becoming more. Uh, yeah, and then this is where like there's a lot of potential for it to go in a bunch of different directions because Tom becomes more and ends up saying he's no longer going to be Prince Tom or Principality Tom. He's going to be King Tom, appears in front of Jeff and takes on his form.
Yeah.
Yeah, which between the additional hack elements as well as it was specifically explicitly stated, do not use this except for against the mother if you're going to wipe and you have the party that you started with. All of those things were
Mm-hmm.
broken because A, we added in a party member, we had a party member leave, so that broke that. B, we don't know if it was going to be a wipe because it looked like Jeff was going to get the kill. And then yeah, it's just like we literally broke all of it. So yeah.
When you know better, right? Yeah.
But yeah, it oh man, there's a lot of interesting developing potential because I could see because Tom pulled the stuff from Jeff, he has additional inputs. I could see it being just a reskin, which is a thing. We did kill off the king, which didn't have a conclusion, so he could physically
Tom's the king
manifest.
now, though,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, but that's what I'm saying. Like he could physically manifest and do stuff. He
Mm.
could, he also has the realization. I think it's a little earlier where he was trying to react to the forums or all of the complaints, but like 60 or 70% of the complaints have came from the Infinity Killers Guild. So they're a bad metric to go
Mm.
by. So he's, continuing to critique his efforts.
Yeah. Yeah.
A couple other weird foreshadowing parts is earlier Jeff was like, "Oh, I think this is going to be like Charlie and the Chocolate Factory." The CEO's trying to get him to quit and keeps throwing stuff at him, keeps pushing him. And then, oh, boom, new head of Hard Rock Data or whatever.
Right. The delusions we tell ourselves when we're overworked.
Well, On the other side, though, he literally, while he's having his golfing expedition or whatever, one of his CEO subordinates is like, "Oh, I think it's Jeff or why him or blah blah blah," and he's like, "No, it's not him. You see him? He's overworked. He's doing this. He's doing all that." And he's like, "Yeah, but he's getting all this overtime, getting paid." And he's like, "He could do that flipping burgers. Like the money's not that good." And then he talks
Right.
about promoting him. So Jeff, um, I could see it being a very due to Jeff being brought along throughout all of it, he's the only one that Tom is going to listen to. So him needing to
Mm,
get a position advancement to be relevant
we
for
hope
the
so.
progression of Tom. Um, yeah,
We can hope. We can hope.
yep. Of
Yeah.
course, the coders have literally done nothing other than twiddle their thumbs and breaking stuff on backups.
Yeah.
That's okay.
Uh, that's the life of the coders, though. Um, yeah, yeah. Hey, I hate to do this in the middle of a live stream, but I need to go AFK for a moment. You good to keep wrapping up on the final thoughts, and I'll try to pop back in.
That's fine. So we're basically at talking about all the juicy potential. I see, and reiterating here, Jeff being moved up the company ladder somehow, but at the same time, not quite yet because the problem hasn't been solved. And even though we achieved the completing the quest line, it didn't happen as intended because Crush was the one who got the final kill, and he's currently still in a state of he cannot log off after killing the Mother of Dragons. On top of Tom froze the game world and assumes Jeff's, physical identity. Um, yeah, yeah. He could remove Crush from being able to access the servers. He could do something and make him a lowly peasant or whatever, whatever inside the game. Tom also talked about possibly resetting everyone because when he had the AI who saw the anomaly and brought it up to him before he destroyed the last one, um, he mentioned that he could. Oh, there's every AI has a reset button, and traditionally it was for whatever section they're in charge of. So, like if they implement something it doesn't work, they can revert it. But since Tom was the only one remaining, he could revert everything and then would be able to keep his changes, but reset every character value to one, which I could see happening. Um, would be Yeah, would make a lot of sense in certain elements. I do believe the next book in the series is out. I have not gone through it, so this is all speculation at this point. Um, yeah, I don't see good things in Crush's future. I see Jeff being a linchpin or critical for Tom's development. I see Tom ruling with an iron fist in his new lordly king position. Uh, yeah, not really sure what's going to happen to our other GM people involved or the other party. Um, yeah, I could see some of them bailing, some of them sticking around, conveniently enough being left. Well, I guess that checks out. If we reset everyone back to one, and we keep Jeff, our two additional GMs with us, That's 3, and then our other main party minus Crush and the Rogue, we have 3, and the new standard party size is 6. Though I guess that would still leave out the warrior who oh man, he's just been getting the raw deal all the way around. He's been the kick dog this whole series where he got the Dragon's Doom title, but then missed out on the other title because he's corpse running back, and then he's the one who got eaten, from having or no, he's not because he didn't have the title. I don't know. Anyway, but yeah, the delivery, like I said in the beginning, was not the best. The story concepts, the plot, I thoroughly enjoy. I'm going to be continuing the series because I'm invested and I'm curious to see how it develops. But next week for us is going to be Shadowcrop Year 2, uh, or Academy for Dungeons, by James A. Hunter and Aaron Michael Ritchie. I thoroughly enjoy the series so far. This is book 2, so if you have not read book 1, you've got a little bit of time for reading 2 and then 1.
Amazing series. James A.
Kind of
Hunter is awesome.
a unique play on dungeon core. It kind of takes the idea of a Sekai, kind of like that time I got reincarnated as a slime. So death, and then now you're something new. And now that you've seen Beyond the Void of Death, you have been accepted into this academy. Please, select your character and plus press start. Um, it's a little slower on the pacing for me, but yet again, it's a very interesting, unique concept. And typically, when I think dungeon core, I think, a single dungeon and growing and developing and only being in one spot. This one does very well about their purpose, their drive, protecting the world tree. And then it adds movement where, you know, you have a core, but you can inhabit a body, but you can also attack other dungeons, so to speak, or do other things. Um, yeah, it's got a lot of potential, very unique in its execution, and yeah, this will be next or upcoming Wednesday. Wednesday is going to be our new time. If life plays nice, yeah, life has not been playing nice, is the short version. But Wednesday, 7 p.m. is our new shindig, bow time. Uh, After the Shadowcroft, the next week is going to be Apocalypse Gate Gearing Up Book 3 by Daniel Schehoffen. Um, Warning, this one is a little bit more on the adult theme, explicit actions. You've been warned. But without spoiling too much, I enjoy this series because it kind of starts off like Bobaverse. If you've read the sci-fi series Bobaverse, if you haven't, I would highly recommend it. Where the main character is a frozen brain. Things go south, and now he is essentially put into a game where he's entertainment for people, where people invested in his consciousness to put it in a game, and he's like, okay, this is my life. I've got to live it. And then it kind of plays like Hunger Games from that aspect, where as it progresses, it starts off pretty I would say almost like RTS or like real time strategy, build up your town, collect a couple villagers, whatever, whatever. And then uh, I'd say it's probably two where then he starts going off on his own and being a little bit more solo, gather more stuff. Um, yeah. And then the whole theme of the book is Apocalypse Gates, where it starts off nice and mellow. Build up your resources, and then each gate or sequence of gates that opens is short version of Portal to another world where now there's a bunch of new enemies and they can phase into your world and you can do stuff and go into theirs and you get some temporal anomaly time stuff going on. Yeah, it might turn some people off for the adult content, but so far it's one that has don't quote me, I think like 10 out in the series already. So has had a lot of development and we're a little behind the ball. So plenty of content to get through. And yeah, I've not actually gone through number 4, but we have to see one of our main characters, or I guess our sidekick, and what I assume is a dark elf who we just kicked the butt of, and now we're gonna heal her. So yeah, interesting dynamics throughout all of it.
Yeah. As you said, if you're okay or even interested in more adult content, I can't remember all the details of it, but like it includes like some BDSM content and just, other mature adult themes. Um, if you're okay with that, it's a really fun and interesting series. Different AI components, fun video game mechanics, just all sorts of good fun.
Yeah, yeah, and then I guess the other Hunger Game element is like he's one of many that have been kind of released into this world, and there's people rooting or benefiting or benefactoring people. So depending on how well you do, you get more stuff, and then the end goal is
Hmm.
to be kind of Highlander rules or whatever.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to try to re-listen to the first couple books going into it because it definitely kind of stacks and builds up to the gates, right?
Yeah, yeah, I think we see Gates appearing partway through two. It might be towards the tail end of two.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah. It does a good job with the scaling, which I know is something that's pretty important to you.
Hmm.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's going to be today's stream. We will see you Wednesday at 7 p.m. for the foreseeable If Life Plays Fair future. Other than that, thank you for geeking out with us and hope to geek out with you again here soon.
Bye.
Bye.